Well, Frank, we got a lot of things to talk about on today's episode because
tax season.
I know this is one of your favorite topics, right?
Except for when I have to pay.
That's right. That's right. It's the same for everybody.
That's right, exactly.
But you get to help save people a lot of money in taxes as part of your planning process.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it's one of the key for our viewers.
It's the first letter in time.
It's the first letter in time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So a very key and centric thing to your planning.
Very much.
So what we want to do is just take a look at some of the changes in 2025, and we wanted to hit this while people are thinking about filing their taxes this year.
Correct.
Even though we're mostly focusing on what you can do for next year's filing. But this is where we go from reactive to proactive.
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the tax changes for 2025. What are some of the things that have caught your eye the most in terms of, even if they're just the basic changes that everybody should be aware of?
Well, I just think that we should always recognize the standardized deduction. Okay? And I think this is really important in retirement, where some folks will have their primary source of income may just be Social Security. Maybe they are the frugal people. They don't spend a lot of money and they can get by with Social Security, but they have a sizable IRA or 401k account. If your standardized deduction, let's just call it around $30,000. If you're not taking $30,000 a year out of that IRA, you can take out $30,000 and avoid paying taxes on that because a standardized deduction will offset that. Okay. So it's a way to possibly do Roth conversion. So that's one thing that we like to really educate people on, is making sure that they monitor that standardized deduction.
And that deduction went up.
It
for
did.
2024,
it was 29.2 thousand and up just a little bit, but
not much, but a little bit. It increases an increase.
That helps.
Absolutely.
30, so it's 30,000 in 2025.
That's right. Yep,
So
that's right.
That's cool.
Yep, for married filing joints.
Right. Yeah. For single filers, I've got your notes here, Frank, that it was 14,600 in 2024, up to 1,500 in 2025.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So
helpful. Also,
nice to get that
what about
increase.
taxpayers age 65 and older? Are they able to find ways to add to that standard deduction?
The standard deduction is pretty big today. I see a lot of people not taking advantage of proper charitable gifting strategies. So with the standardized deduction being so large, some folks will still give $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 to charities on an annual basis, but they're not recognizing a deduction on that because they're not exceeding the $30,000 standardized.
Okay.
Right? So people that are giving to charities should probably open up a donor advised fund, which we do for many of our clients. And then you can front load that donor advised fund. If you're going to give $10,000 a year for 50 years, $10,000 a year for 5 years, you could front load that donor advised fund with $50,000, get a tax deduction on that $50,000. But you have to use a charitable strategy to do that. You can't just, if you're going to write a check to your church for $10,000, you're not going to get the deduction. But if it goes into a donor advised fund and then goes to the church, then you recognize that deduction.
Okay. That's a good little nuance.
Absolutely.
People will also have the opportunity to invest more in their 401k in 2025.
Correct.
They've increased those numbers, it looks like.
They have. Obviously, a big fan of funding a 401k. You want to get the employer match. You get the safe harbor provision out there for the 3%. So there's a lot of benefits to funding a 401k. I think it's also important to recognize your tax bracket. Okay. Because I'm a big fan of tax-free income in retirement, which would be a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA.
Yeah.
And I see people just kind of throwing darts at this. Well, I'm going to put half in my Roth and half over here. But what you can do is you can look at it as you get closer to retirement. If one of the spouses retires, at that point, if the tax bracket drops, then you could look at doing some Roth conversion. So get a bigger deduction today and convert it at a lower tax cost down the road. On the flip side of that, let's say that you're in a lower tax bracket. Okay, entry-level position, just getting started off. Maybe you're in a 12% tax bracket. Maybe that's the strategy, or maybe the strategy with that tax bracket is to contribute to a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA. Because you're only getting a 12% deduction for putting in a 401k.
Right.
I don't know if that savings is large enough to, fully fund or max fund a pre-tax account. I think at that point, maybe we look at blending pre-tax and Roth, or maybe entirely Roth at that point, depending on your savings.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So that those contribution limits went from $23,000 in 2024 in your 401k up to $23,500 for 2025. So just make sure you've accounted for that in your paycheck withholdings. And if you didn't, it's not too late. If you still want to max out, you can make those adjustments mid-year and try to save a little bit more so you hit that max
Absolutely.
out.
Yeah,
That's
you can
helpful.
still contribute to a tax filing as well. So
yeah.
Yep.
Talk to us about catch-up contributions. How big does that move the needle? Because those are $7,500 additional that you can contribute to that retirement account in 2025. So potentially a total of $31,000 this year that somebody can save.
That's right. If you're trying to catch up for retirement, that's why that provision is in place.
I know that person may not have the 30 years of working for that money to, start stockpiling, but
But that's okay. Helps. I mean, every dollar you save and every dollar that comes off your tax bill is definitely a big help. So if you could take advantage of that catch-up provision, I absolutely would. But again, look at, is it, are we going to catch up on the Roth, or are we going to catch up on the traditional? Yeah. Okay, because they both follow, you have the same provision for both of those accounts. So just kind of monitor the tax bracket, depending, on what your tax savings is contributing to a Roth versus traditional. But definitely take advantage of the catch-up.
I should mention that catch-up is for people 50 and older. And then if you're 60 or older, you can actually make that catch-up contribution up to $11,250 in 2025. So again, even more opportunity for those folks. No change in IRA contribution limits. They stayed the same this year.
Yep.
So still $7,000 with a $1,000 catch-up contribution. Let's talk about HSAs though, because in 2025, individuals can now contribute up to $4,300 into an HSA, $150 increase from 2024. But that amount you can save into an HSA is going up and up.
It is. And I think that's one of the most underutilized tools in a retirement plan is an HSA account. Yeah. An HSA account is incredibly powerful from a tax perspective, and most people abuse their HSA accounts or don't understand the tax benefits. So it's the only account or tax strategy the government's ever created that you receive a tax deduction for contributing. Okay. Mm-hmm. Usually if you receive a tax deduction, that's a tax deferred account, meaning it's taxable when you pull money out.
Everything else is a pay me now or pay me later setup.
This is, I get a deduction today and it's tax-free down the road. The only account the government's ever established like that for us. I think another situation with HSAs is folks will fund it and then immediately pull money back out to go get, a pair of glasses or pay a copay at the doctor or something like that. You only experience tax-free growth if you let the money grow. Mm-hmm. So if you put the money in and take it right back out, you're really not experiencing any tax-free growth. You're not experiencing any compounding tax-free growth on that. You typically don't. If you got positive cash flow when you're working, just pay for the eyeglasses out of your own account.
Yeah.
Let that HSA compound. So you maybe have $50,000 or $100,000 in there, after retirement, because as we age, we're probably going to have more medical bills than we do when we're young.
Right.
So don't abuse the HSA, and definitely take advantage of it. It's a triple tax treatment versus any other account out there.
Yeah. And I know you can't go use the HSA money to go on a vacation, but you're going to have plenty of needs for it as you get older.
Correct.
Right?
And if you don't spend it as you get, let's say that you're in perfect health all the way till 90, then after 65, you can actually utilize that HSA account just like you could a traditional IRA. I still would not do that. I would still, utilize it for healthcare purposes.
Sure, but it's not like you'll lose it at some point.
That's right. Yep.
Makes sense.
Correct.
I've heard a lot of people use this strategy for then when they want to retire early and they've got that healthcare gap, and they might need to go on the exchange or whatever to supplement their health insurance coverage until they get to Medicare age.
Correct.
They can use those HSA dollars for those premiums. Yep. And so it helps people retire earlier than they otherwise would have.
Yep, that's right. Another key component, HSAs are pretty neat accounts, is that, and it's very easy today because everything is billed digitally. So all of your billing from healthcare is digitally archived, right?
Yeah.
So you can save all of those bills for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Let that HSA account grow, and let's say over your life you have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. You can use the HSA tax-free and all of that compounding growth and pay all of your past out-of-pocket expenses.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, very cool account.
That is cool.
Yep.
So again, that's $4,300 for individuals in 2025. The limit went up to $8,550, so over $8,000 now for families, which is, again, huge. Yep. And they even have a catch-up contribution for that account, 55 and older, an additional $1,000. So that's pretty cool. All right, so which of these tax strategies do you think would have the biggest impact on retirement savers and like where people should really kind of adjust their strategies accordingly? Sounds like you're a big fan of the HSAs if people have that opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think people take advantage of those the way that they should. And again, I think instead of just throwing a dart and saying, I'm going to put half into a Roth and half into my traditional 401k or IRA, really look at the savings versus your tax expenses down the road and try to determine, what your tax bracket is. And, if you're in a high tax bracket, as big of a fan of tax-free Roth accounts as I am, I would still, if you're in a high tax bracket, take advantage of the deduction today, wait till that bracket drops, and then maybe do some conversions at a lower cost down the road.
Yeah. Does that advice change depending on the person's age when they're meeting with you? Like somebody closer to retirement, is that advice or guidance different than somebody who's maybe still 20 to 30 years away from retirement?
Yeah, there's a lot of different formulas in there as well. Obviously, the sooner you start contributing to a Roth or a traditional, the sooner you're the more time you have to compound those funds. So, even contributing a little bit to a Roth early could turn into hundreds of thousands of tax-free dollars later on in retirement. So,
okay. Yep. Very cool. Obviously, everybody's situation's different. So if you want to really get into these numbers and dive in and get guidance on what's exactly right for your situation, come in, meet with Frank, talk these things out with him, of course. For someone who hasn't been proactive with tax planning, this is ultimately what we're getting at here, folks, is the difference between, hey, I'm filing my taxes in 2025 for last year, the 2024 taxes. We're talking about tax planning, which is looking at in 2025, what can I do to help my 2025 taxes? For somebody who's never kind of gone that proactive route, what's maybe one thing that they can do or a step that they can take this year to start optimizing things? Yeah,
I mean, if somebody came into our office, Walter, again, we would evaluate their current tax bracket. Okay. We also would know if they're getting an automatic raise on an annual basis, determine what their tax bracket was in the future, how long they had before retirement, what their tax bracket was going to be after retirement. And again, just have the Roth conversion conversation, the contribution to traditional versus Roth conversation. Yep. And again, just take that to a proactive level, looking forward down the road just to make sure that they're properly prepared from a tax perspective in the future.
Good. Yep. Excellent. Well, there's ways to get in touch with Frank and the team at Oliver Asset Management, both on the screen and in the description of today's show. So no matter where you're watching or listening, should be easy to find that information. I'll also point out your attention to the opportunity to book an appointment with Frank and his team. You can go through a consultation of your financial plan, see where you are right now, go through the tax planning as one element of that, and start developing that plan for the short term, the midterm, and the long term financial future of you and your family. We've got a link to book that call in the description of today's show as well. So check that out. One last thing, I want to point people in the direction of the guide that you put together, Frank. 7 questions about Roth IRAs, and is one right for you and your retirement? So it touches on a lot of the things that we've talked about today, plus a few other bullet points. We've got a link to that guide in the description of today's show as well. So lots of things for you to check out as you think about taxes this year and beyond.
Fun talk.
Yeah, it's good. Hey, saving money, though, is a good conversation.
It's a great thing,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we can do with this. So thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Walter.
We'll see everybody next time on The Time Blueprint.
Thank you.
Investment advisory services offered through Creative One Wealth, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Oliver Asset Management and Creative One Wealth are unaffiliated entities. Licensed insurance professional. This information is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as advice or a recommendation for your specific circumstances. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Insurance product guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. We are not affiliated with any government agency and do not provide tax or legal advice.